Hi there, my name is Matthew Smart and I'm a huge fan of simple arcade games. To me, they represent the core of what makes gaming such a fun hobby. They're the types of games that you look at and you immediately understand what they're all about, even if you've never heard of them before. The two easiest and most famous examples I can think of are Pac-Man and Galaga. All the key information you need is given to you as soon as you press start, and you don't need to wrap your head around controls, mechanics, or even a plot in order to have a good time. These games invite you in to let loose and have fun without any preparation needed, but they also get really difficult really fast, forcing you to understand the simple control scheme down to a science if you want to have a chance at making it far at all. This is what we call Bushnell's Law, or in layman's terms, easy to learn, hard to master. And some of the most iconic arcade games of all time follow this line of thinking. But in my opinion, none of them have been able to match the uniqueness, charm, and replay value of Super Monkey Ball. And now all of my dreams are about bananas. The game was originally released exclusively in Japanese arcades in the summer of 2001 as simply Monkey Ball, and was founded by Sega employee Toshihiro Nagoshi, known for his work on Virtua Fighter and Daytona USA, and would later become the director of the acclaimed Yakuza series. So yes, that means the person that made this also went on to make this. Now that is what I call character development. Nagoshi wanted to make a game that anybody could pick up and play, since arcade games were becoming increasingly complex at the time. So he came up with the idea of rolling spheres through mazes similar to games like Marble Madness, and his team, Amusement Vision, eventually decided to stuff monkeys in the balls, not only because they looked cute and appealing, but it also helped convey the ball's movement way better than if there was just nothing inside it. The game was well received in the arcades, but the team saw the potential it had on home consoles and decided to release an enhanced version of Monkey Ball, now titled Super Monkey Ball, as a launch title for the Nintendo GameCube in all major regions. September 14th, 2001 Japan, November 18th, 2001 here in North America, and May 3rd, 2002 in PAL territories, making this the first Sega-published game, not counting Dreamcast ports anyway, to be released on Nintendo's own hardware. It became a huge success, both critically and commercially, and sparked one of Sega's most iconic franchises of all time, for better and for worse. Now, the GameCube was my first video game console, and I was still young enough at the time to have my parents decide what video games would best appeal to me. And I remember my mom buying me this game because she knew that I was stimulated by simple and colorful things, and she thought the game looked very cute and harmless. But little did she know that this simple game would cause her son to enter a never-ending spiral of insanity that he has yet to recover from, all because he tried to master this stupid monkey game for years on end. So let's talk about it and have some fun, shall we? The concept of Super Monkey Ball is simple. Your objective is to guide your monkey of choice to the goal at the end of the stage without falling off or running out of time. Run out of all of your lives and continues, and be prepared for an African funeral. Now you have 4 different monkeys to choose from, those being Ai, Mimi, Baby, and new to the GameCube version, Gong Gong. All of them play exactly the same as one another, so your choice will purely come down to preference. However, I've always been partial towards Baby, mainly because he's just so freaking adorable. I mean, look at him! He crawls around in his ball, he has the best dances, his speech is slurred just like mine was as a kid, he has the most innocent voice. Ah! I don't care what anybody says, we appreciate and protect Baby in this household. Go! But back on topic, how you get through these stages is as simple as tilting the control stick on the GameCube controller. Nothing more, nothing less. There's no complexity to the controls in any way. Your only other control option is to press the A button to change the size of the mini-map in the bottom right corner, which I personally never found too useful, at least in this first game. Otherwise, all you'll be doing is moving the control stick to tilt the stage around. Yeah, you're actually tilting the stage, not the monkey itself. I never noticed this as a kid, and even today, I don't think it's as big of a deal as some make it out to be. It's a cool effect, and there are a couple of stages that take advantage of this, like this boxing stage where the machines only move when you do, but for the most part, you'll just assume you're moving the monkey instead. Now you might think that such a simple control method would be a bad thing. I mean, a game like Balan Wonderworld, for example, was criticized heavily for its one-button control scheme. But in my eyes, it's not about what controls are there, but it's how they're used. And I think the control stick only approach is a part of the game's genius design. The levels are structured like obstacle courses at the end of the day, and the fact that they were all made with just the control stick in mind forces you to use it as precisely as possible if you want to advance through each difficulty smoothly. And adding, say, a jump button, for example, would eliminate a lot of that challenge. I also think this type of game works perfectly with the GameCube controller, as the notches on the edge of the stick, alongside the tiny dead zone, helps improve precision greatly since you can easily snap to a certain direction and make super subtle movements. There are 3 difficulty options: Beginner, Advanced, and Expert, each containing 10, 30, and 50 floors respectively. Beginner introduces the player to the main hazards and mechanics like holes, slopes, moving platforms, and thin paths. Advanced not only introduces new mechanics like bumpers, curved platforms, and conveyor belts, but expands on the material from Beginner by making more difficult remixed versions of those levels or putting them in new levels entirely. And Expert is the same for Advanced, with a little bit of jank in there that I'll get to in a bit. This method of progression I feel is a great way to prepare the player for the obstacles ahead when they're ready to move on to the next difficulty. Introduce an idea in a more forgiving environment and then change it up when it's time to take the next step. But simply making your way through these stages is not enough if you want to be a real gamer gorilla. As I mentioned before, this is an arcade game at heart, so getting high scores are greatly encouraged. There are 3 methods to boosting said score: beating the level as fast as possible, finding special goals in various stages, and collecting bananas. Bananas are littered everywhere throughout the game, and there are even bonus stages that let you nab tons of them at a time. And nabbing 100 of them will net you an extra life, which you'll definitely be needing a lot of when you first start out. Sure, you have continues if you lose too many lives, but using one will reset your score back to 0. So my advice is to stock up on your potassium intake and inject as many Dole brand bananas as possible into your veins. That's not even a joke either. Sega actually partnered up with Dole to put their branding on every banana in the game, even having a stage dedicated to the logo. Selling out before the age of DLC and microtransactions, truly the Sega way. I don't know anybody who would fall for such a stupid and sleazy tactic like that. This tastes like curry. Presentation-wise, the game is a treat both visually and musically. The simplistic art style and the monkeys and their expressive animations still look appealing today, and the stage environments, while a bit dated, are still aesthetically pleasing. They all have cool background details like the Colosseum in the sky and the penguins in the Arctic, but they aren't too detailed to the point where it distracts your eyes from the stages themselves. And the music is super catchy, fully embracing the upbeat arcade nature, with my personal favorite tracks being from the Sky, Underwater, and Storm worlds. It's pretty important for these things to be so good, because you'll be seeing these places and hearing these tunes a lot as you struggle with some of the insane difficulty spikes. Alright, let's rip this band-aid off. I would like to paint this picture in your head that will bring war flashbacks to numerous Monkey Ball players. Expert, Floor 7. What is this stage? Who is this stage? And why is this stage? You start out by going up a steep hill followed by a turn with a 90-degree slant with very little wiggle room to build up speed to make it up. Then you have to go down a thin flight of stairs followed by a checkered floor that's just begging for you to fall through it. And finally, you have to make it across a long, narrow, curved path in order to reach the goal. All within 60 seconds. Let me remind you that this is floor 7 in a 50-stage campaign, and most of the later stages aren't nearly as stressful as this one. The funny thing is, this was originally intended to be one of the secret master stages, but then the employees at Amusement Vision said that God hates you and wants you to suffer. This stage is brutal and unfair for such an early part of the expert run, and made so many children, myself included, put down the game long before conquering it. How I managed to beat it on my first try while recording for this video, I will never know, but I think you get my point. This game does not mess around. It may look like a cakewalk on the outside, but deceives you into that line of thinking super quickly. In reality, this is one of the hardest games from the 6th generation of gaming. As I said earlier, you have to master the simple control scheme if you want to make it far, as later levels demand you make such precise movements even across the simplest of obstacles or get left in the dust. I already talked in depth about Expert 7, but Expert 9 ain't much better, as you have to go across giant curves on such a narrow plane, even if you take the fattest path. Floor 17 has you move through several divided sections that you can only get across by going on circular conveyor belts with bumpers on them. Floors 27 and 42 have you move diagonally across such small tiles. And floor 22 is literally just the Sega logo, and still one of the hardest levels in the game because of the giant gaps you have to get across. I'm not going to pretend this game is NES hard by any means, but it's still ruthless when you're just getting used to it. It requires your full, undivided attention, and anything less than that can and will result in many fallouts to come. And that, to me, is the key that makes Super Monkey Ball such a fun and engaging game. By making these stages so challenging yet so short at the same time, you always get that urge to figure it out and conquer it, especially with how quickly you get back into the action after losing a life. Even though some of these stages may look impossible, you can easily figure out their quirks the more you play them. And once you finally realize their tricks, they aren't nearly as intimidating to get through anymore. There's even a practice mode which lets you play any stage you've accessed for as long as you want if you're really struggling on a certain stage, or just want to try some tricks without pressure, which is a nice option to have. Practice makes perfect, and the more you learn the stages, the easier it will be to make it through everything while burning less lives and netting a higher score. Heck, if you're good enough, you might be able to reach the extra stages, which you get by being beginner or advanced without losing a life, or in the case of expert, without losing a continue. And if you beat the extra stages on expert mode on that same continue, you get to play the elusive master stages. I've never been good enough at the game to get to these stages myself, but I've seen footage. Oh Lord, I've seen footage. I am now convinced that Sega is actually run by monkeys. There's no way around it. But that's enough about the single player. What if you want to play this game with your friends? Well, you can play the main game together, and you only need one controller to do so since everyone takes turns, which is nice. There's also the competition mode, where everyone plays at the same time, and you have to get as many bananas as possible on a select number of stages. But then we have the real meat and potatoes, the party games and mini games, the latter of which you have to unlock via play points here in the main game. These easily could have been a simple side distraction made to advertise multiplayer on the back of the box, but no. These are actually very well fleshed out game modes that take the Monkey Ball concept further than just simple mazes. They all have a surprising amount of depth to them, and most of them can be just as fun, if not more fun than the main game itself, depending on who you talk to. Since there's only 6 of these, I might as well go over them all. Kicking off the party games, we have Monkey Race. This is your standard Mario Kart clone. You go around various tracks and get items along the way like banana peels and ice blocks to try and get an edge over your opponents. And the first one to reach the finish line after a certain number of laps wins. Now, just because this is a Mario Kart clone doesn't automatically mean it's a bad one. I never said it was a good one either. It's just pretty finicky. It's hard to make sharp turns without coming to a dead stop, and the item effects last for way too long and can change the outcome of a race entirely. The track layouts don't help either, as there's a lot of hard corners that you can easily slip off of if you're not careful, and bunkers that you have to tediously climb out of. It's still a fun mode, but it pales in comparison to the other two party games, like Monkey Fight. Here you're thrusted into an arena with a boxing glove attached to your ball, and your goal is to knock all the other monkeys off the stage in order to get points. And the player who has the most points after 60 seconds wins. Several boxes will appear during the match, and breaking them will net you items that enhance your glove as long as you don't get knocked out, such as making it bigger, making it reach farther, or making it spin while punching. If you want my advice, always go for the spin power-up. It is beyond broken. This game can be pretty disorienting with so much going on, but it's dumb, hectic fun that I love to revisit. I especially like the fact that if you win, you can aim your glove at the front of the screen and the camera will react to you punching it. They didn't need to include this at all, but the fact that they did is so charming. And then we have the ultimate party game, Monkey Target. This has to be one of the most fleshed out and addicting side games I've seen in any video game. And if you haven't played it yourself, you need to put it on your bucket list pronto. You fly off a ramp at the highest speed imaginable, and your goal is to glide to and land on different islands with point values on them in an attempt to get a high score, all while collecting bananas along the way. But there are two catches. The first comes in the form of help items that you get for grabbing the bananas, and these will give you handicaps on certain rounds if you choose to accept them, such as getting rid of the wind, doubling or tripling your point total, allowing you to stop much faster when you land on the ground, or just stopping entirely as soon as you land, which is super useful if you want to get the mega points. The other catch is the Wheel of Danger. You'll spin this wheel before every round, and depending on what it lands on, there may be a hazard that spawns that you'll have to deal with, such as a thick fog, spiked balls that flow in the air, or bombs that will explode and send you flying if you touch them. Rest in peace to baby. He was a good baby. One of the best, in fact. Some would even say he was super. But deep down, we all know that he was indeed grown-up monkey like us. All hail our glorious baby overlord watching down on us from the great beyond. Wait, why is that banana heading towards me? Wait, oh gosh, no, run! Get back to reality! Now you do have the option to turn help items in the Wheel of Danger off if you want to have a more traditional experience, but that's no way to live. These features spice up the gameplay just enough to keep you on your toes. For instance, do you want to disable the wind to make flying around the map easier? Or do you want to hold off and try get the magnet ball for the next round? Then there's the stress of the wheel and thinking, gosh, I hope I don't have to deal with the fog this time. It's a perfect blend of luck and strategy, and the fast pace makes trying to land on the high scoring targets super challenging, and I still find myself falling into the water from time to time. It's just a fantastic side mode, and easily my favorite in the whole series. They could release Monkey Target by itself as a $15 digital title, and I'd still put money down for that. And those are the party games. They aren't perfect, but they're such wacky and fun ideas that over-exaggerate their concepts and benefit greatly from that. The minigames, by comparison anyway, are much more basic. What you see is what you get. Monkey Billiards is a standard 9-ball game of pool. You have to hit the lowest numbered ball on the table and try to sink every one of them into the pockets until only the 9 balls left. Sink it at that point or with another ball by knocking into it and you win the set. It's nothing crazy, but it's good for when you want to relax. Monkey bowling is a lot of fun though. You know how bowling works. Launch the ball into the pins and try and knock down as many as you can. You can control the direction, power, and spin of the ball, and it actually controls really well. It's definitely one of the more precise bowling games I've played. There's also a challenge mode that arranges the pins in a set order and you have to knock them down in one shot. It really forces you to think outside the box and come up with strategies you wouldn't have thought about otherwise. And of course, the dances you get for getting a strike are magical. This is what should be played when you get a strike at bowling alleys. And last but least, Monkey Golf, or as I like to call it, yeah, I'm not gonna sugarcoat this one. Monkey Golf flat out sucks. It's a simple game of mini golf. Sink your ball into the hole with as few putts as possible, and the controls work fine for what they are. The problem comes down to the course design. These holes are an absolute joke. They require the most accurate shots if you don't want to fall off the course, which not only loses you a stroke, but doesn't even get you closer to the hole. These holes feel like they were designed for the main campaign, and that simply doesn't translate well to the golf environment, which isn't nearly as precision-based. All the holes have a par of 3, meaning it's an average of 3 putts to get into the hole, but you'll be finding yourself reaching most of these in double, if not triple that amount, if at all. Look at this hole and tell me there's still hope for humanity. This game is so poorly designed, and judging from footage I've seen of other people playing it online, I know I'm not the only one who thinks that. By the end of my playthrough, I got a total of 82 strokes on a 54 par course. I still got number 1 in the rankings. I guess participation awards are common in the world of golf. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with Neo Turf Masters. Thank you very much. And that is pretty much everything that Super Monkey Ball has to offer. And overall, this is the type of game that just keeps getting better with time. As the gaming industry pushes forward with innovative ideas and groundbreaking worlds to explore and rich stories to tell, games like Super Monkey Ball are far less common than they were in 2001. And that's a shame, because I feel this is the type of game that speaks to the heart of what games should strive to be. A simple and strategic game that's easily understandable and tailored to your skill level. The controls being as basic as they are despite the complex level design make them so satisfying to master. And the fast pace of the action makes it beyond inviting to jump in, push through the stages, and try and beat your high score. It all goes back to the concept of Bushnell's Law I mentioned at the beginning. It is such a welcoming game to anyone that picks it up, and they can get the hang of it fine, but stick with it and you'll feel like you can tackle any challenge that stands in your way. Beyond that, the party games, barring Monkey Golf anyway, are all really solid, work with the theme of the game, and make for insanely fun multiplayer game nights. And of course, the charm of the monkeys themselves and their world makes everything feel so alive. It's not perfect by any means. The difficulty spikes in expert mode are very apparent. There are some lazy ideas for stage concepts, and some may find the game too short if they're just trying to blaze through it. But at the end of the day, this is the definition of a pure game. Every time I come back to it, I love it even more, and I continue to learn new strategies and shortcuts that improve the experience even further. If you're a fan of arcade games, puzzle games, or just looking to challenge yourself with something new, you owe it to yourself to give this game a try. Super Monkey Ball is the ultimate arcade experience brought home. And with its unique concept, snappy controls, lovable characters, and satisfying sense of progression, when you combine all that together, you have a game that will forever remain timeless. Also, the speedrun community for this game is insane. They've been able to pull off stunts that I couldn't even dream of and make the hardest levels look like baby's first video game by comparison. Like, I genuinely think some of these players are just aliens sent from space to show us mere mortals the truth. So I'd highly recommend checking out some runs when you have the time. They're definitely worth a look. And do you want to know the funniest part about all this? The original arcade game expected you to beat all of these stages with a banana-shaped joystick. I take it back, it's Sega that's run by aliens. But hey, that's just the beginning of the story, as only 1 year later, Sega would release a sequel that was bigger, bolder, and in many fans' opinions, even better than the original. So sometime soon, we'll be finding out why, as I take a look at Super Monkey Ball 2. I'll see you all then.